Hello everyone, my name is Nikolai from Vyonyx, and today I will be presenting you the first episode of a series of new videos that we have been recording at our studios lately. And before we begin, I would like to take a couple of minutes to explain the ideas and the nature of these new tutorials. As we have done some in the past, this time we are introducing a few novelties worth mentioning. First of all, these will be records of real jobs produced in our studio, not imaginary or experimental projects, which does not exclude the possibility of us realizing videos of theoretical nature as well. And the reason we are preparing these videos is because we believe there is a lot of value in exchanging knowledge derived from the realities of our industry, and that these videos could provide us with a good platform to showcase various aspects of our workflow and techniques employed on a daily basis at Vyonyx. Eventually, we hope to spark some kind of a discussion depending on the interest these videos generate and the feedback we are going to get. They will be touching on topics with no definite answers, which is quite interesting, and it will be great if they could serve as a base for a discussion about this endless road of discovery we are all involved in. Depending on the point of view, we are facing certain boundaries, limits and restrictions in these videos, mainly due to the fact that they are based on real projects with their own specific requirements, circumstances and stories behind. We are responding to exact sites, cultural contexts, clients with various agendas, but that's what makes life colorful at the end of the day. Which leads me to the next novelty we would be introducing with these videos, and that is all these background stories we would like to reveal and share with you. They could be of interest to young viewers with limited production environment experience, and in my opinion, many of these tales and events behind the scenes are more exciting than the final product coming out of the oven. Journey is more important than the destination is a fitting quote in that respect. Another this time slightly more real restriction is the NDAs we are made to sign and abide to on most of the projects we do get involved. A lot of them are confidential, and for good or bad they will never see the daylight, but I hope we can show some of the deserving ones. We have been and will carry on recording videos of some of the work that passes through our hands. On some cases just pieces of small gems rather than start to finish image making classics that we see a lot of online. All that with the prospect of their respective projects hitting the public domain at some point in the future, so we can share these pieces with you. There's something else I want to mention in these introductory words, that these videos will not be a course or university curriculum that follows a certain logic or hierarchy. However, some basic 3D image making knowledge will be required from the viewer in order to take full advantage of them. Most of the time you will be facing a Photoshop screen, which we are all familiar with, and the viewer will feel right at home. Cozy and comfortable place with few buttons to be a major cause of concern from a technical point of view. Also, none of us at the studio has teaching experience worth mentioning, and we can admit it here and now. It will be more of an improvised series rather than a well-oiled, sellable marketing material, and that is not our aim anyway. We have limited resources, mainly time, if I may say, to refine them, so we are quite happy to present them rough around the edges, so please bear that in mind when studying them. There might be various discrepancies, loose ends and not fully explained aspects of processes, techniques shown, so please excuse us for that. These videos will be useful to us as there will be a good reflection for us, of us, and our work and philosophy our studio follows. As since the beginning we have been quite open to testing various approaches, theories, techniques and tools on live projects, which has taken us to troubled waters in many occasions. I'm sure you'll get a better idea of how we are through these videos and how we deal with such scenarios. And yeah, lastly, for us there will be more of an experimental knowledge exchange tool platform rather than well-engineered educational product, and I sincerely hope you will enjoy them. Right, shall we start with this first topic for today? For short, we call this tutorial Water. Okay. It is of a mixed-use project we have done recently in the Middle East. The project comprises of a number of mid-rise buildings, mostly residential, organized around a beautiful marina. We will be showcasing the work that went into the preparation of the foreground area of one of the views prepared by us. The view is looking into a residential complex in the distance, which has a small courtyard area with a pool and various outdoor activities. It is, I could say that it's a pretty standard type of view that you can get commissioned for on a regular basis at most of the studios nowadays, and that's why we picked it as well. So as it is a good base to debate over, let's say. The focus here will be to go over the specific steps we followed in preparing the foreground area of the image and treatment of the water, people integration, and adjusting all these elements so they fit into the shot. You will see at the end the finalized shot as well, with all the other areas being treated to completion. I will be talking over the pre-recorded video, so the sound won't be real time, shall we say, but that gives me flexibility when it comes down to formulating my words and explaining things more precisely. The immediate foreground is a big water surface, so the obvious choice is to start with sourcing some good high-res images of marinas with similar lighting conditions and have them ready either as references or material that can be inserted in our view. What you see currently is on my screen is the basic render coming out of the render engine, and in this case we used Maxwell, and we are beginning building our scene. First stop, the water. Simple as that. Here I'm testing some of the photos I picked earlier and playing with types of layer passes that Photoshop allows, just to get a feel for it. Once happy with the position of the texture, I'm focusing on the edges where it meets other parts of the shot, making sure there are no big jumps in the contrast levels or color, so it blends well with the rest of the back plate. As you see here, I'm darkening a bit the immediate foreground in order to create some sort of a hierarchy in my view, separate the different planes and help inviting the eye travel enter into the view with a bit more ease. And by the way, you can read similar behavior in the reference shots gathered so far. Actually, this is a good point worth mentioning here. One of the initial tasks of the artists at our studios when starting on a new project or image is to gather enough relevant photographic or just any inspirational material and collect them as references for future use. Some of it could have relevance for the lighting scenario and atmosphere we may try to achieve. Others could be descriptive of the site, the context, could be some cultural specifics that we will have to pay attention to, and so on. Finding these good references and reading, studying them is a crucial part of our work. They are hiding the answers to many questions coming while working, and it's enough to start by asking yourselves, why do you like a specific image? Save it in your reference folder and analyze it, and you'll be surprised. On top of that, we can use parts of these shots in the views we're developing, and by skillfully borrowing techniques from the concept artist tool palettes, you can quickly improve your shot with more compelling details than the purely computer-generated counterparts. As you will see later on and other videos that we'll be showing, we regularly use photos in our shots with quite convincing results. So here I'm browsing through a pre-selected search of marinas, sea bottoms and waterfront shots. Saving some of these shots in my project reference folder and testing them, or parts of them, in order to see how they fit in my scene. The trial and error aspect in our work is vital, I would say. You need to feel free to experiment, play, be open to drop into the shot various other material, see if it clicks with your view. At the end of the day, you can always have the authority to get rid of them and bring something else in. Here, if you look at it, I'm trying to introduce some depth in the water by bringing in more pronounced texture under the surface of the sea. I am introducing some rocks, which is an additional layer that adds more definition and enhances the depth of that area. We had to put some extra effort in here, as we did try to get a convincing water out of the render, but no matter how hard we pushed it, it was not good enough for us and the client. As a matter of fact, the client was quite critical throughout the whole process about this shot, and we had to test and try hard to get a convincing view and convince them as well as a result. Here it looks like I'm onto something, and I'm trying to fit and blend it better in the view. Now there are two layers of photography I'm working with. The darker part on the left side, implying a bit more depth, as we do not see the seabed, while on the right side, closer to the dock edge, you see more of it under the boat next to the dock. I believe I'm trying to find here some precedents of reflected boats. In general, calmish water reflecting yachts, boats will do for me, so I can use them in my shot, or at least study them. Maybe here's a good time to explain a bit about Gobotree. It is an image database website containing loads of useful photos, textures, cutouts of people and vegetation, and various other useful entourage. In general, just tons of material, which comes very handy when working in Photoshop, and we do use it a lot at our studio. This part of the work on this shot is all about fitting as much real photography on the foreground as possible. Okay, without going overboard. Obviously you need to have many things in mind while pre-selecting these photos. Lighting condition for one, make sure the sun is coming from the right angle. Second, the scale. The size of the objects in our scene need to correlate naturally to the ones coming from the outside. Then comes perspective, needs to match as well. We'll talk in more detail about some of these aspects in one of the coming videos, when we will be showcasing how to build facades in Photoshop of scenes that do not contain a lot of detail. Now going back to the scene, here I need to make sure that the rocky seabed I'm introducing fits well within the scene, making sure the stones do not look overscale and match with the perspective of my view. Nothing in general should look too big, too small. I have to constantly keep referring to the scale of my scene to make sure that things are working. Once all that checks out, I can move to the slightly more forgiving task of blending these layers well. So here I'm blending two photos with the base render, and I need to pay attention to these three layers and make sure they work as seamless as possible. Obviously we have other possibilities on a later stage to neutralize differences by adjusting the overall color levels and adding various effects, shall we say, which is very tempting in most cases, but getting your job done here properly is vital, as the better you have them working here, the less trouble you will face at the end. As a result, your shots will be way more crisp and accurate, with honest textures and well-balanced feel, I think. Just think of that as the foundations of your house. Let's say you don't want these compromised, do you? So that's the same with our shot. Okay, here I'm adjusting the contrast levels of the concrete wall of the dock edge, having in mind that every area you touch here has a knock-on effect on the rest of the shot. What I mean is that you need to keep the light distribution on all surfaces true to the shot and avoid extreme contrasts. Very bright or dark areas should be avoided unless you have unusual circumstances, and you do get these sometimes. So then breaking some rules is allowed. It's not all set in stone. Too high of a contrast here will greatly limit your chances of controlling the shot at the end. When working on the overall balance, you will need then this raw balance image below, so you can play with the adjustment layers and color in the areas you want to emphasize, depending on your overall concept. Okay, this corner here obviously should not be brighter than the left side of the board, so I'm trying to get something more convincing. Certain parts of the videos will be quite self-explanatory, so I don't feel the need to describe them. I'll keep quiet from time to time and just leave you in peace with it. As you can see, I'm trying to define a shadow on the left side of the boat according to the sun position. And talking about the sun position, we had certain polemics with the client in that respect, as our original suggestion was to have the sun coming from the left side of the view, as we felt the shadows work better with the composition and the whole dynamics of the shot. But despite of that, they insisted on having it where it is now, which introduced some complications for us. The sun angle is very close in respect to the viewing angle, and that usually is not favorable situation. That way your tool palette gets robbed quite a bit, as you do not have the freedom to explore the shadows and contrast between surfaces needed to build one of those magical shots. And this is a good example of one of those limiting factors mentioned at the beginning of the video, where the client has a specific request which you have to respect at some point and take some of your creative reserves, let's say, to work your way around it, and hope that you have enough of it left in the tank to get you to the end of the shot. In this case, we had the camera pretty much fixed as well, and we had some trouble building the composition of the view. And at the end, as a solution, we ended up positioning the boat where it sits now, which does a couple of things for the image. One was to extend the timber walk of the dock over the boat deck, let's say. And the boat also gives a very good orientational emphasis to the building, which sits quite a bit further back otherwise, to be identified as a focal point easily. So this directional dynamics introduced by the boat helps in that respect. Here I'm creating some more depth in the water by emphasizing the catamaran's bottom, so it's seen better through the water. Now turning my attention to the people in my shot. As you can see, I'm pre-selecting some that could be tested on the foreground. and I'm just browsing through and looking for ideas. Really, anything that catches my eye can be downloaded quickly and dropped in for a quick check and test. As I browse, I do think of a story as well. As we all know, people are secondary elements that can greatly complement the whole scene, and they can work with it or against it. So obviously it's a lot better if you can get them to cooperate, shall we say. Okay, maybe that sounds a bit harsh and totalitarian, but let's say to complement our view. It's nice to have a convincing layout. In this case, we are going to bring in this lovely couple, possibly newly married, maybe about to sail away on their honeymoon, or more likely admiring their newly purchased flats in this amazing marina development, which is a plausible suggestion in the developer's dreams, I guess. Now, everything about their position, their stance, their existence in the shot is very intentional. As you can see, they are gazing into that focal point mentioned earlier, giving us an additional directional aid, if I may say, which is another guide for our eyes to be taken to this central plaza where all the fun will be happening on a later stage. Definitely nighttime. There is something else worth mentioning about the people here. They are getting a bit too close to the border of the shot, as you can, if you can agree, or at least too close to my liking. Usually it is more acceptable for the key figures in your shot to be participating more categorically, shall we say, in the view. Around the golden sections or rules of thirds are well proven through the years locations. Here they're not in that ideal spot because of various reasons mentioned before. One option is to drag them further into the view, but then what will happen is they will be getting smaller because of the perspective, and they won't have then the right prominence and will lose meaning a bit. So it comes down at the end of the day to a fine balance of having them the correct size, having them on the right spot, and having them on doing the right thing. So it is tricky. Now looks like some more dudes are starting to appear that seem to be enjoying the scenery. The cool thing about Gobotree is that you can get quite specific with your searches. Obviously we are using Google searches for tons of stuff, but you have to be quite patient and equipped with loads of time to sift through all those images spit in your search in order to find something useful, and eventually you will, that's for sure. But I find that your brain gets quite exhausted at the end of this process while using sites like Gobo, you have a tagged database prepared, you can narrow down your searches quite conveniently. In the case of Go, you can tell the system what you are after and specify even camera angle, lighting conditions, which is great for our work because we can have different levels for the camera and so on. And yeah, depending on the type of view you are developing, you can narrow searches for high level raised or aerial shots at any specific time of the day. The limiting factor is the number of results you are getting. Obviously, they're not nowhere near as many as on a random internet search, but the benefit though, you are getting very specific narrowed down results and you can pick something relevant quicker, especially if you're on a tight deadline. As you see, I'm downloading various possibilities which I will test and see how they fit in my scene. Move them around and check if they click. If not, I can easily bring someone else in. As many people from our industry quote, the people and vegetation alone will not make your scene, but they can ruin it for you easily. So very careful attention needs to be paid to these elements, starting from the scale. In some cases we might use placeholders to give us the right height, but in most cases the trained eye should be able to place people well enough without helpers, especially for high-level shots. Scale and proportions of people is one of those misfortunes in our work, I could say, as our brains are so well programmed to recognize these, and the slightest discrepancy is a disturbance to the viewer and it's picked up very easily. Having said that, now I must admit a small offense here, because the foreground people are not the correct size. They should be slightly smaller, but that does not work as well in the composition of the scene, so we are telling a noble lie here by having them bigger so they have a better presence and meaning in the shot. Now on to some fine adjustments and making sure that the light in the scene works well with the lighting scenario of the people brought from the outside. So masks in your scene, using masks when working in Photoshop. They are a very useful tool when making selections. In this case we have used Maxwell as a render engine and have not prepared specific masks, unfortunately, for each object, since the Maxwell guys have kindly provided us the possibility to render all your color IDs, object IDs, normals and so on without too much time spent in setting them up. And you might say, because we have been a bit lazy here, now we need to come up with some creative tricks to get the right selections. Sometimes we need to invest a bit of time in Photoshop preparing our selections, and I guess it's more intuitive and fun than clicking, let's say, on various buttons in your 3D program to get them set beforehand. Here I feel the need to pay some attention to the texture and volume of the dress of the lady, as at the moment it looks a bit flat and it's quite close to us, so I'm indicating some relief, wrinkles, texture, as opposed to the big white mass that it is now. In most cases these fine adjustments have to be done when bringing people and other entourage into your scene, as they have lived a fine life in other places with different lighting conditions, and some work needs to go into blending them well into your scene. Best is to break them down in your head, let's say, to simple geometry like flat surfaces, cylinders if you want, and then think how the scene light will affect them. That way it's easier to compensate for these differences. You don't have to do that for all the people, but the key players, let's say, you do have to analyze and take the correct actions to blend them as good as you can. And again, don't be scared to test maybe a couple of different brushes. Just add a layer on top and have a go. Don't forget, whatever you add does not have to be absolutely impeccable unless you start zooming down to the last pixel. It won't matter if it's not perfect, and it cannot be perfect, as you have to pay attention to every single pixel otherwise. As long as you follow the general lighting concept of the shot, you will get believable results. Just add light where it needs, or darken the areas which have more than needed. And little by little, always gonna come together and work seamlessly when you zoom out. It is good to mention that it is important to get out of the image from time to time. Just zoom yourself out of it, especially when you have been working for a while in a smaller area, which tends to be the case with the entourage, people, trees and all that. looks like we are going to get more fish in the water, which is always nice. This, as you see, is endless, so you can work forever on a shot or area of it, and in most cases it comes down to you getting tired of it or having the pressure to deliver something. An image is never finished, you can work on it for literally forever. But I think there's a point that things start deteriorating drastically, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this point break, let's say. When you're about to start going down, it is very important to reach a good level before that happens, because things can go wrong even before even reaching a decent level, which is not something any artist wants to encounter, but it can happen. In most cases, the common cause is when you're onto something and you have the potential to create a nice image. Then you get stuck in reacting to certain requests coming your way. The request could be for various reasons and could be no one's fault, just the nature of the project, the setup, the circumstances, and inevitably you could end up in trouble. And that's why I think it's very important to spend enough time with the image and to try to make the right choices in order not to get lost when things get hectic. Having fun is crucial, in my opinion, in order to reach heavenly heights with your work. The reason why sometimes images go down the hill is simply because the artist stops enjoying working on the view for various reasons. Could be just tiredness or getting conflicting feedback. Positive feedback obviously helps a lot to keep you going, but sometimes you don't get that. You often get negative feedback, which makes it very tricky to maintain concentration levels and keep pursuing this magical moment when things are clicking and working and you get this immense satisfaction of your work. On real life scenarios, there are many factors that are affecting our images, and as they're not made for their own sake, let's say, and with rights for artistic existence the way we want them to, the images we produce on real commissions have an agenda and are made to serve a certain purpose. In that respect, the output of such process is quite on utilitarian product, and it has to be, as someone is commissioning it with a purpose, not just pleasure. That is why the status of our images is difficult to define. It is a complicated mixture of art and pragmatics, hard to evaluate and judge. They are not product of art solely, and in most cases a product of a quite demanding process with the aim to reach out with concrete messages for specific audience. Could be convincing the public to support a local regeneration development, could be getting investors on board to back up the next carbon neutral city, or showcasing a product that could change the way we live in the future. The aim could vary greatly. The common theme behind is this complicated program, or brief, shall we say, that we need to understand and analyze well and discuss with the clients in order to build the correct strategy for the view. Inevitably, all that has a knock-on effect on the quality or not not quite correct to say, shall we say, the purity of our images. It has an effect on the honesty and purity of the images. Using a color accent is a useful technique to know and explore when you want to draw attention to a specific area of the image. As you can see, the scene is still not very rich in color, and placing this red element in it will play a certain role in the view. And it's a matter of balancing and good decision making of how much attention we want over an area and where exactly do we place it. That's why I'm testing various options for it. Again, all the elements are getting the final adjustments so they blend well with the rest of the scene without standing too much by having too much contrast and color. The current objective is to build the correct composition with all the surfaces having convincing textures and materiality and lighting. Then we'll be adding our final tonal, color and contrast adjustments on top of the whole scene, and we'll be paying more attention to the view as a whole. Hope that makes sense to everyone. Currently our attention goes just to the separate elements without exaggerating specific areas yet. Back to the wedding dress here. I find it a bit tricky knowing how much I should speak, and I guess with practice it will get better. Just a reminder, we're only focusing on the foreground of the image in this video, with the building and the background being developed by a colleague in parallel. And once all is ready, we will be merging both and have hopefully a complete shot, which we'll see at the end. See, here I have overdone it a bit, so I need to take some of the lights out, but again it's a matter of playing with it, adding and taking out, zooming out, and trusting and relying on your brain and eyes to approve of that. In our case the shot is pretty detailed, it has a lot of fine elements, and all that started with the building, which was a bit problematic here. As a matter of fact, we did receive this wonderfully detailed model from the architects, and naturally their main focus was the building and wanted to have all the textures and color well pronounced. And this was a cause for a concern for us, as the building is quite a bit into the shot and not very close to the camera, and if we are to have well expressed colors there, we'll end up with a very saturated foreground colors if we are to stick to the logics of aerial perspective and light distribution. Obviously the farther away the objects are, the less color saturation and definition they will have in most cases. This was a constant battle between us and the client to find the right balance between having the correct treatment of the building according to their request and having the overall view working. On top of that, the client of our client was mostly concerned with the space and the marketing aspects of the view rather than the architectural details, so it was a big challenge for all of us, which ended up with a compromise on all sides. Okay, some more water and waves. Looks like we are going to add some extra drama to the shot by integrating birds into it. Maybe here we should share some thoughts on the types of views and their usage, as they can differ dramatically, as you can imagine. Depending on the stage of the project, you may be looking at completely different shots in terms of detail in them and overall feel. The concept stages could afford to be more loose and evocative with less detail. Literally, you can have half blank canvas, and it does feel good to work on this level despite the complications that may arise due to the unknown and this undetermined responsibility we have on our hands. On the other side of the spectrum is shots like the current one, where the project is going to marketing, or worse, is about to get a final design sign-off with the intention for the shot to be used for marketing as well. And I'm sure some of you are smiling now, as this is a well-known practice in our industry. Usually at this stage all the geometry is resolved, which is good, and things are more controllable, and you can rely on well-proven recipes for the correct ingredients that marketing processes require, let's say. The danger here though is that these principles not always take into consideration the overall consistency of the image, and can have a negative effect from an aesthetic point of view. These are probably the two scenarios that are at the extreme ends: concept and marketing, and there are various other cases that could develop in between. And don't forget, ultimately each project is unique and has its own challenges that, if recognized on time, could be brought to a happy end. In the case of our current view, we do have to pay attention to minute details like the dress of a person, adding fish to the water, birds, and so on, as the stage of the project and the target of these shots dictates all that. We need to have the right entourage, people, and the general story in the shot should be according to these needs. All these elements that we are placing are adding up and are very helpful, but very dangerous, especially if not handled with care. Obeying the hierarchy in the image is very, very crucial. We tend to do a lot of early stage projects where the views are more conceptual, and we do enjoy these a lot. And we have developed certain skills through the years that are very well suited to shots of such nature. Here you can see clearly the area where we have been working on, with all the rest covered with natural tone, and I think in a second you will see the final shot as well. These tests here show the flexibility I was mentioning earlier that you get at the end when adjusting your contrast levels and tonality over the whole shot, if you've done your groundwork correctly. Okay, I think we're coming to an end, so let's summarize that. Let's summarize what we went through. We did show you how we use various elements from photographic material, carefully pre-selected. and you saw how we blend these as best as possible, placing them strategically within our scene. We did pay attention to our lighting scenario and tried to complement the scene's overall composition. We paid special attention to scale and proportions of all those elements and made sure we have a well-balanced contrast levels. We briefly touched on the subject of types of views and purposes that they may serve, which is a big topic on its own, and we hope to be able to prepare a separate talk dedicated to that subject in the future. Here is the final view as well, and I sincerely hope you have enjoyed this video talk. I believe we should be getting better and better at doing these and show some more aspects of the work getting done at Vyonyx. Feel free to leave us your feedback, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.